Hello everyone. In this video I want to speak about the upcoming completion of Jupiter squaring the nodes. So while Jupiter was in Pisces for many months this year, Jupiter was squaring the nodes. It was actually doing that while it was stationing retrograde, beginning to station retrograde in Pisces. This was happening when the nodes were about 10 degrees or so in the Gemini-Sagittarius axis. So what's happening right now is the nodes are at the very, very bottom of Gemini-Sag, ready to regress because nodes move backwards into Scorpio-Taurus. And at the same time, Jupiter is in Aquarius, moving towards Pisces. So they're all kind of culminating with each other at that transition point between the fixed and mutable signs. I'll share my screen so we can take a look at it. And I want to just highlight the energetics of this. So I put Jupiter on the first house. Right now, November 1st, Jupiter is at 22 Aquarius. It's about 9 degrees from the nodal axis. And just watch what happens week by week. 23, 24, 25. All right, so in a month from now, we have Jupiter at 26, only 5 degrees away from the nodes. And then by the end of the year, Jupiter's at 29. And then they all meet at 1 degree. In the very beginning of January, to be exact, we can actually say it is, somewhere between the 2nd and the 3rd of January. So this means all of November and all of December, for the next 2 months, this is tightening. So it's worth giving special attention to. Let's tune into what this speaks to. First, when we look at Jupiter in transit, Jupiter corresponds to how we're always expanding our understanding of reality. And there's a humbling appreciation that this is a journey. If we're here, it means we haven't figured it all out yet. So in virtue of being on this journey of awakening, of remembering, there's always going to be the next insight. There's always space for our perspective to open up more. In fact, we can say that the limitations in our perspective and our insight and our understanding really just reflects where we're at, the paradigm that we're playing out. Our readiness and openness to evolve and grow is always going to be matched by a greater capacity for insight. We're going to repeat the same story, interpret things in the same way, have the same ideas of where we're coming from and where we're going, always in a way that matches whatever paradigm we're holding on to, whatever desires we're fixating on, wherever we're stuck in our dynamics. But when there's a spaciousness to grow, it's always met with a willingness to see things in a different way. In fact, there's a teaching from A Course in Miracles. Maybe I'll just open right to it. It was this beautiful prayer that basically affirms, I do not know what anything, including this, means. So I'm going to paraphrase it. So I will not depend on my own past thinking to interpret this present moment. That is so powerful. When we think about how often we just know what things are, we've decided what the answers are. It's basically this way of moving through life with a pre-established construct that says, this is what the meaning of everything is. This is how I can understand it. This is how I can give a context to the greater unfolding of my life journey. And we have to have a certain level of willingness to say, how does that make me feel? Right? Does that accompany a sense of peace and wellness? Does it accompany a sense of space and forgiveness and acceptance and togetherness? Or does it accompany a sense of fear or tightness or anxiety or self-righteousness? Sometimes we feel like we're giving ourselves peace by giving ourselves self-righteousness. It doesn't actually feel good, but it satisfies our ego, and so it seems like it feels good. Like, I'm right, they're wrong, they're this, things are happening this way. We're actually suffering immensely in that moment, but we might not notice that because we're identified with this very odd identity that thinks, if I can be right about my worldview, as dysfunctional and painful as it is, I will feel happy. I will feel good. So it's this way of associating peace, happiness even, contentment, with pain and suffering. And we might tell ourselves that everything's okay, everything's great. And we see this in how often we find, and this is a Jupiter function, we can get into philosophical or spiritual debates about the right way, the political debates, social debates, cultural debates, philosophical, political, religious, diet, points of views, perspectives based on a certain understanding of reality, and how easy it is to become so sectarian about it, to become very charged and very divisive. My way or the highway. I'm right and I need to convince myself. And in Jupiter and Aquarius in particular, it's I need to be right. And in order for me to feel emotionally secure about my rightness, I need to associate with other people, with groups of people that share the same view. So in being a part of community where my views, my perspectives are shared, I don't have to look at myself anymore. I can actually let go of the deeper invitation for direct experience and present moment living, because I've come together in a way where these constructs, these beliefs are shared. And so I don't have to learn anymore. In fact, everyone agrees with me. So I don't have to learn anymore. I don't have to worry about there still being this evolutionary journey. I can forget that I'm on this pilgrimage. To really feel that we're on a pilgrimage with Jupiter, it's a beautiful experience, because the energy of being on a journey, the energy of being on a pilgrimage, means we can be true to the journey. We can be true to the experience and not really have too many fixed ideas or plans. And that's very different than wandering and lostness. It's not our purpose to be lost. It's not our purpose to wander. It's never true. It's never a dignified way to know ourselves. It's a very important lesson that I'm learning, that I wish to share. It's a mistake. It's a confusion. When we understand that there's a humility and there's a spaciousness in being open to the present moment, it just means we're open to learning. We're open to seeing that there's more to understand. The identification with lostness, with I don't know where I'm going, seeking, oh, here's an opportunity, here's a group, here's a philosophy, I'll join this, oh, they're all believing in this, or they all resonate with me in some way. There can be this seeker quality that is actually rooting in this deep anxiety to know, this need to get there, this need to understand, and thus the need to, all the different mechanisms that we play out. And that lostness can very much orient towards, I'm going to join this construct that will validate some things that I understand and give me a sense of security so I don't have to face my not knowing. It's kind of like being on the pilgrimage and you stop driving or you stop walking at a certain point because you found a little nook or a little shop or a little station along the mountain that feels really comfortable. And it temporarily takes us away from the fear and the anxiety and maybe the inadequacy that comes with not having gotten there yet, right? Not having reached our goal, not having reached a deeper realization, a deeper insight. Maybe that part of ourself that believes we can't know, the truth is inaccessible, I'll never understand, or I'll never reach that level of insight that other people have. So we give up on the practice, we give up on the journey, on the cultivation, which has to feel like it's a journey. It has to feel like every day I'm here to realize more of the truth. So this orientation to the pilgrimage is inherently optimistic because it appreciates, it doesn't matter how difficult things are, how confusing things are, how philosophically confusing or contradictory different elements seem to be. It allows me to orient to life experience from the perspective of there's in this moment something to learn. As long as I'm not going to stop the journey by either just settling for something that creates some sense of security, but it kind of builds a wall, it builds a box around the fluidity of the mind. It ceases the growth, right? Or just sort of giving up entirely and living in this sort of restless, opportunistic pessimistic attitude where we no longer try. And the challenge with that Jupiter and Aquarius can be the sort of pessimistic, right? Giving up on life, giving up on humanity. There's no, we can direct this externally in terms of community, society, politics, government, spirituality, teachers. I don't want to trust. I don't belong anywhere. I'm disillusioned, or I'm frustrated rather, by community. I'm alienated. I feel different. Right? Everyone believes these things and I believe this thing. And we can let that become a point of contention. We can allow that to become a point of deep frustration. And even, here's an interesting point. We talk about whatever we think is important. Like, I'm talking about this because I think this teaching is important because that's obviously relevant for me. We're only going to teach and give voice to whatever is, it's reflecting a level of awareness, a level of realization that is awake for us in this moment, right? So I'm going to speak to this dimension of spiritual truth according to my own learning, because that's a part of my learning. We might have different realizations, or we're like, I'm going to speak up against this political view, or this spiritual perspective, or this religious view, or I'm going to propose for this perspective, politically, socially, religiously, diet-wise, right? Whatever is awakening within our awareness, there's often a tendency to become radicalized in it and to make a big deal out of it. And sometimes that's just a part of the playing it out and integrating it, right? Teaching helps us integrate our realizations. But it can also become a dogma. It can become like this is what I'm standing for. It becomes its own religion. And again, the test is, do I need people to believe me? What happens if people don't believe me? What happens if others in the community or in the group see it differently? What if I'm the only one? What if there's no reference for this? How does that feel? Do I feel insecure? Do I want to shy away? Do I identify with the feeling alienation? These are all really important things to look at, because if our motive to stand in our truth coincides with that self-righteousness, with that alienation, with that differentness, then we're going to be building a world for ourselves. Like, that's our spiritual journey. So many people walk a path where they're moving towards alienation. They're moving towards separation because the philosophies and the constructs are built around that. So we just want to check in. David Hoffmeister quoted once, and I just read it in the course last night. I don't remember where I found it, but this is, I love A Course in Miracles because for me, it really just points me to these universal truths. And this one teaching that resonated deeply for me is, understanding can only come with peace. Understanding can only come with peace. I wish I might have taken a picture. Because if I did, I want to read it to y'all. Oh, I took a picture of that. I do not know what anything, including this, means. And so I do not know how to respond to it. And I will not use my own past learning as the light to guide me now. What a powerful and humble acknowledgement. Truly. Okay. Yep. Then I'll take a picture of that. Oftentimes we seek an understanding, but that understanding coincides with a lot of anxiety. And so is it true understanding? It's beautiful to reflect on that. If an understanding of phenomenal reality coincides with stress, with anxiety, with separation, with fear, with anger, do we really have a complete perspective? If the nature of reality, if we're drawing upon an absolute truth first, which says the nature of reality, our true nature, the truth of the present moment is togetherness, is peace, and that there's a way of seeing from an undivided mind, then it means the non-peace is up for reinterpretation. So all of this being Jupiter and Aquarius in particular, it's moving direct now, so it's building ground. We know that these themes are incredibly present in the collective right now. And I've never really lived in a time period where there was more charge around political, social, spiritual views. And that people within the same community, be it maybe the same spiritual community or same subculture or general political perspectives, even within that, there's so much division. So many divergent perspectives that often very much becomes a point of profound contention. I'm seeing it a lot, and it's actually really profound. So we always want to take everything as the indication of what's healing. To not become so involved in the strife, in the struggle, but to see that in our own lives and in the collective as, okay, this is where there's a healing that wants to emerge. And so I will choose to not identify with a way of reacting, a way of responding to life experience, to emotion, that further nurtures polarization and separation. Really, the nature of the human species is such that we're all going to have a different level of interpretation, a different level of insight, and even on a very relative level, our insights can sometimes not be compared to one another because we're all going to have different levels of insight and see different dimensions of an experience, of reality, that is going to be very relevant and right for us in our ongoing realization. The order and the directionality and the way in which we all come to understand things is very specific to our own journey, right? For example, just to give a very generic and uncharged example, some people might, start off with a yoga practice, go very deeply into asana and physical postures, and that will take them towards meditation and doing more deeper, subtle, energetic work. And so for them, there might be an arc of realization from moving from the perfection of the body and form and alignment to actually letting go of that and going deeper into consciousness, into a spiritual attention to what's happening inside. We might have another soul that starts off more on the meditation path, and they might have a tendency towards isolation and hermiting, maybe a deeper unresolved hatred of the body, right? There can be an escapism dynamic that they're working through, but they could have a deep capacity to access very deep realms of spiritual experience. There might be a journey of realization for them of healing their relationship to form from a spiritual perspective. And so they might have a journey to walk that actually has to do with the body and health and practice. They might find themselves going to a gym and really getting into physical fitness. And so we can't judge any realization and the direction in which realization occurs. And we cannot judge how that manifests for people, even if it's moving in a particular political direction. A conservative that becomes very liberal, liberal that becomes very conservative. We're all trying on different ways of knowing ourselves to apprehend more of the truth in the ways that are accessible for us at that time. What's most important for each of us is that we cultivate that open-mindedness and that humility to appreciate we're not done. There's more. We haven't figured it all out yet. And so whatever we're learning now is what we're learning now. And the best that we can practice is not just tolerance, but curiosity and appreciation. And a mentality of togetherness. That's so essential here. And for ourselves to just be also open-minded. Like, oh, this feels helpful. This feels useful. And many of us, according to where we're at on our journey, we might feel to totally try something on, right? Like, I'm going to drop meditation and just focus entirely on physical fitness. Sometimes a soul might do that. It's not right or wrong, but it might be a part of the journey of finding integration and deeper wisdom, deeper insight. Oftentimes, there's a teaching, one of my first acupuncturist, Chinese medicine teacher, healer, many years ago. Josh Painter is his name. Recently reconnected with him on Facebook. He taught me this really beautiful Chinese teaching that went something like, before integration, there's always profound polarization. We know this. We know this is true. We can study that in our own life. It's beautiful. And actually to feel the polarization, to notice it and actually say, oh wow, this feels really polarized. I feel really separate, or I feel really divided. those experiences are actually indicative of unification, where the mind hasn't yet relaxed into a new state of this happens because we haven't yet relaxed into a new way of seeing. So the polarization is always a function, it's always a result of what we know, what I know, Bucks, no, I know it, and then reality. And then we need to somehow respond to reality and how it presents, be it internal experience, social experience, relational experience, political experience. It's like life is what it is, and it's gonna happen relative to our frame of reference. And if our box is here, there's going to be profound polarization. There's going to be strong yeses, strong noes, strong where I belong, strong where I don't belong, strong what's okay, strong what's not okay. And that's going to be very, very pronounced to the extent that we have our way, our truth, or our way of seeing reality, right? And then reality. And so it's always this point before a relaxing. And I think that starting point to realize I must not see the whole picture. I must not get it all. Because why? I'm not feeling peace. I am in struggle. That's, to me, where love can come in and actually guide us and teach us. It's an opportunity for something beyond our existing level of insight to actually make its way into our consciousness. So part of the work with Jupiter, and this is what is becoming more and more pronounced, especially once Jupiter enters Pisces again and squares the nodes. So, that end of December, moving from Aquarius to Pisces and really tightly squaring the nodes, it's a profound culmination process of a transit that's been happening pretty much for much of this year. There's that invitation to truly be open to the journey. Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say? How would you have me see this? Being really open to the pilgrimage and just noticing where we get stuck, where we want to set up shop in different places that feel comfortable. So let's take a look again at the chart. Jupiter is squaring the nodes, and it's the ruler of the south node. And in fact, the south node is what we call the resolution node. When we work out a square to the nodes, one of the nodes sort of holds a particular point of integration for the entire complex. And so this really takes us into appreciating, one, there are too many perspectives and points of view, Gemini. Too many possibilities, too many. If it's about life direction, what you're doing, where you're going, too many possibilities. If it's in terms of what to believe or what to be a part of, or what to, what movement or party or practice to have, what sadhana it should be, what your daily spiritual practice, too many possibilities. They're just way too many. We're not going to get anywhere if we're trying to logically piece something together. It's like sitting in meditation but scrolling on your phone, right? That's the metaphor. So we want to actually orient inside. And I think a part of the work that we can cultivate right now while Jupiter's in Aquarius is developing an objective consciousness, seeing everything as an observer, and beginning to understand some of the deeper principles, the deeper teachings, the deeper truths. When our insight needs to be validated with logic, which is always going to depend on past learnings, there might be an invitation to see if this is really bringing peace. Because there are logical pathways that are going to emerge at this time according to an apprehension of reality that we haven't yet achieved. When we're guiding ourselves by our intuition, even if it's countering, and this is important when Jupiter enters Pisces, if our intuition is guiding us in a certain direction, even if it's countering all the data, right, even if it's dreams or things we've been told or things we've read, things we thought were true. If our intuition is guiding us, that's the most direct knowing. And in time, it reframes all the contradictory data and information. There's a teaching I heard once that Creator speaks to us in 4 ways. The lowest is a dream. After the dream, I think it was, signs that are happening external to us, or maybe visions. Visions and signs are one of them. But then the most direct is an inner knowing. Right? There's nothing happening out there. There are no dream messages or voices even speaking to us. It's an inner knowing. It happens from a place of direct communion. And our intuition, in my view, is how we access that. Intuition, which is Sagittarius relative to Pisces, is where we're directly connecting with the flow of life right now. Guidance in this present moment. Guidance can manifest in all kinds of ways. But we don't want to be moving forward in life according to a belief or an idea or this is what I was told and I'm just going to do it. But to actually feel that we're moving with spirit. We're moving with love. When our intuition is connected to the truth, right? The flow of the Tao. We can't empirically explain why. We don't need to prove it. We just get to know it. And that's always one of the deeper teachings of true knowing. When our knowledge rests steadily inside, and we don't need to explain. In fact, explaining it might get it confused because it's just known. And the more we think we need to explain it or justify it is oftentimes indicative of where we are needing to validate it through logic or needing other people to believe. But what's rested is peaceful, and with peace there's true understanding. So these are the transits, and mind you, we're going to have 2 eclipses happening in these next 2 months between now and when Jupiter completes the square. These eclipses with the nodes, and the south node being ruled by Jupiter. So there are strong active themes, and maybe in another video I'll speak about these upcoming eclipses. We're having one in the upcoming full moon, and then in a month from now, the next new moon. So it'd be great to tune into the specifics of these energies right now. So this was this teaching on Jupiter squaring the nodes over the next 2 months. Hope it was helpful. And feel free to ask questions or speak to any of these dynamics that you wanted to share and speak to in the comments. And I'm very happy to tune in and respond to any questions that are shared as well. Just want to end with one little announcement. The retrograde class series is continuing, and you can always drop in to an individual class. We're going to be teaching another class. What's the date? I think, let me look at my calendar for a moment. It's Friday, the 12th of November. We'll be teaching Venus retrograde, and this is just several days before Venus enters the shadow period, where Venus is going to go backwards to after its retrograde. So it's going to be a really meaningful and powerful class on what's going to be a very powerful Venus retrograde cycle, but also just the retrograde Venus archetype in general. So you can check that out on my website, artimoshe.com/retrograde. All right, much love to you all.